I've worked as a 911 dispatcher for over 12 years now, and in that time, I've learned how to keep calm under pressure, how to stay composed while people scream in my ear, how to talk someone through chest compressions while their spouse is dying right next to them, how to coax a child to hide while their drunk father breaks down the door, and in all that time, I've taken thousands of calls, maybe tens of thousands, but there's one I can't forget no matter how hard I try. I've changed departments twice since then, moved apartments, even stopped drinking caffeine for a while, because I thought maybe the jumpy nerves were from the coffee, but it's not. It's from that call. We still don't know where it came from, who it was, or even if the woman was real in the way you and I think of real. It was around 2:47 in the morning, mid-July, the kind of dead hour where the only sound is the buzz of overhead, fluorescence, and the tired typing of a report you forgot to finish earlier in the shift. I was flipping through my incident logs when the screen lit up. Incoming call, unknown. Nothing odd about that. Burner phones, scrambled VoIPs, restricted landlines. We see it all. But the second I answered and said my usual 911, "What's your emergency?" I knew something was wrong. There was no delay, no fidgeting on the line, no background noise, just this eerie clicking sound, faint and irregular, like fingernails tapping plastic. Then a whisper, barely audible, like someone struggling to make their voice heard through a throat swollen with fear. "Help me," it said. "Please. I don't know where I am." The voice was a woman's, dry, cracking, as if she'd been crying or screaming for hours. I remember leaning in, pressing the headset tighter, turning my volume up, because I didn't want to miss a single word. "What's your name?" I asked gently, trying not to spook her. "Lisa," she whispered. "I think my name is Lisa." That's the first thing that chilled me. I think. I asked her to stay on the line and tell me where she was. Anything she could see, hear, smell, anything that might help us trace her. She said it was dark, too dark to see anything, and that the air smelled metallic. She was lying on a cold floor, rough like concrete. "No windows," she said. I think it's a basement. There's something humming, like a fridge or a freezer. And I hear dripping. I was typing like mad, flagging the supervisor, setting up a priority trace, all while coaxing her to keep talking. "Can you move?" I asked. She paused and said, "Not really. My arms, yes. My legs? I can't feel them. I think he drugged me." He was the next red flag. I asked who he was, but she couldn't say. She never saw his face. She remembered walking to her car after her shift at a diner along Route 6. It was raining. She was parked in the alley behind the building, and then something grabbed me. From behind, smelled like sweat and gasoline. I woke up here. Her voice was shaking, her words slurred slightly. I asked if she could hear anything besides the humming and dripping. "Footsteps," she whispered. "Above me. He's upstairs. Sometimes I hear him talking, but not to me, to something else." I asked what she meant by something else, but she just said, "He doesn't know I have the phone. It rang once earlier, loud, and he came down. I pretended I was asleep, but now I have it." "Where did you get the phone?" I asked, trying to pin something concrete. "It was on the shelf. I don't think it belongs to him. There were other things up there. A bag, a woman's purse, a shoe." I swallowed hard. She was describing what sounded like a trophy shelf. I asked her to tell me more about the room, and she tried. "It's small. There's a door but no handle, just bolts. I can hear a fan somewhere, and it's wet. I think the dripping is blood." I signaled for every trace protocol we had. Still no location. Nothing was pinging. I told her to keep whispering, and I tried to draw her out gently. "Do you remember anything else about that night? Something you smelled, saw, heard, anything?" She said she remembered a song on the radio, an old country song, and she remembered a streetlight flickering out just as she stepped off the curb. She said she remembered feeling watched that night, even before she left the diner, like someone was staring at her from across the parking lot. I asked if there was anything about him she could describe: his voice, clothes, smell. "He hasn't spoken," she said, "but I heard him humming. Same song as on the radio. He knows it too." My skin crawled. I could hear her starting to panic, her breathing speeding up. "He comes at night," she whispered. "Only at night. Sometimes he brings food, but mostly he just watches." "Lisa," I said as calmly as I could, "you're doing great. We're working on tracing the call. Just stay with me. Talk to me." "I don't want to die down here," she said. "I don't want to end up on that shelf." Then silence. I thought I'd lost her. "Lisa?" I said. "Nothing." Then, "He's coming." Her voice had dropped to a breath, and then the call cut out. No click, no beep, just gone. We tried redialing. The number was untraceable. We dispatched cruisers to every diner along Route 6. We pulled surveillance footage. Nothing. No Lisa, matching her voice or description, was reported missing. It was like she had never existed. I listened to that recording every day for a week, then once a week for a year. I couldn't shake it. Something about her voice. It wasn't just fear. It was finality. Like she knew the call wasn't going to save her, but she needed someone to hear her anyway. I'd lie awake at night, thinking about that humming sound, about the purse on the shelf, about the other shoe. And then, almost exactly 3 years later, on the same night, the same time, my console lit up. Unknown caller. My stomach flipped. I answered. Silence, then static. And then her voice, screaming. One long, piercing scream, like she'd been holding it in for 3 years. The line cut again. We tried everything, still untraceable. Some people said it was a prank. Some said it was a glitch, a recycled number, a data error. But I know what I heard. I know Lisa's voice, and that scream wasn't random. It was pain. It was terror. It was her. Since then, every July, I stay late that night. I wait for that screen to light up again. I don't know if she's real, or if I caught something between worlds, some fragment of suffering that's still echoing out there. But I do know this. Someone named Lisa called me from a place she didn't understand, in a darkness I can't imagine. And for a few minutes, she was real. She was breathing. She was terrified. And then she was gone. And I'll never forget that silence that followed, like something had finally closed its grip around her for good. I've been a 911 dispatcher for just under 9 years now, and in that time, I've learned that not all the calls we get make sense on paper, or follow a logical, clean arc that you can write up in a report and file away with a clear conscience. Some of them claw under your skin and stay there, not because of the blood or the violence, but because you know deep down that the world you live in is not as solid or explainable as you thought it was. This happened 4 years ago in late October, around 3:30 a.m., when I was covering a double shift for someone whose kid had the flu. I remember it was cold, unusually cold for that time of year, and the station's heat had gone out earlier. So I was bundled in a hoodie and sipping my third cup of stale breakroom coffee when the call came in. No caller ID, no number, just unknown. Not super uncommon with some VoIP or blocked numbers, so I answered as usual. 911, what's your emergency? There was this weird delay at first, like the line had connected, but someone hadn't quite decided whether or not to speak. And then a man's voice came through quiet, ragged, like he'd been crying or hadn't spoken in hours. "There's someone at my door," he said, and immediately I could hear something off in his tone, something I couldn't quite put my finger on, like he was trying to stay calm, but barely holding it together. I asked for his name and address, and he gave it to me. James R., living in a small 2-story rental house on the outskirts of town. Nothing remarkable about the area, mostly quiet families and retirees. Can you describe the person at your door? I asked, preparing to type the incident up. There was a pause, and then James said something that made me stop mid-keystroke. "It's me," he whispered. "It looks exactly like me." I thought maybe I'd misheard, or he meant someone wearing similar clothes or something like that, so I asked him to clarify. He repeated it, more panicked this time. "It's me. It's my face, my body, standing at my front door, smiling. It's not knocking, it's just staring." I felt a shiver crawl up my spine, not because I believed him immediately, but because his voice wasn't joking or drunk, or high, or unhinged. He sounded terrified, dead sober, and that made it worse. I asked if he had any history of mental illness, or if he was on any medications, and he cut me off, not angrily, but like someone who didn't have time to waste. "I'm not crazy," he said. "I swear on my mother. I'm looking at it right now through the peephole. It hasn't moved in 10 minutes. It's me. I mean, exactly me. Same haircut, same hoodie I wore yesterday. But it's wrong. It's smiling too wide. It's not blinking." I felt this strange tension coil in my gut. I muted my mic and waved down my supervisor, quietly flagging it as a priority check. Meanwhile, I stayed on the line and kept him talking. "Is the door locked?" I asked. "Yes," he said, voice shaking. "Deadbolt and chain. I didn't open it. I thought it was my reflection at first. Like maybe I left the porch light on and it was reflecting back through the glass. But it's not. It's outside. It fogged the glass when it exhaled." My skin prickled. I asked if there was any way he could safely record it or take a photo, but he said no. He didn't want to get close to the door again. He'd already gone too close once. I waved at it, he admitted, almost like confessing a sin. Just a test. And it waved back, but it didn't do it the same way. Like it was mimicking the motion, but didn't understand it. I asked where he was now, and he said he'd gone upstairs into his bedroom, locked the door, and was watching the staircase. "I can't hear it anymore," he whispered. "I think it's inside." I sat up straight. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Did you hear the door open?" "No," he said, "but there was this pressure in the air, like the house inhaled. And now the hallway feels different, like it's watching me from the shadows." My supervisor was already dispatching units. ETA was 6 minutes. I told James to stay quiet, stay on the line, and hide if possible. I could hear him moving creaking floorboards, the hush of a closet door sliding shut. Then, silence. For almost 2 minutes, there was nothing but his breathing. Then something new. A second voice. "James," it said. Quiet, almost sing-song. Not on the line, but in the room. "Close. James, come out." I froze. It wasn't exactly his voice, but it was close, just slightly wrong. Like a recording played at the wrong speed. "Do you hear that?" James whispered. "It's in the hallway. It sounds like me, but it's not me." I asked him to stay hidden, to not respond, and I heard him shift, trying to stifle his breathing. The other voice continued, now closer. "Why are you hiding from me, James? Don't you want to see yourself?" And then it laughed, a broken, stretched laugh that sent a full-body chill through me. I could hear James quietly sobbing now, trying to keep quiet, trying not to shake. The sound of slow footsteps crept closer. "It's outside the closet," James breathed. "Oh God, it's whispering through the door. I think it's smiling still." Then, "James," the voice on the other side said, and then quietly, "I'm already inside you?" I don't know what happened next. The call cut off. No screams, no sound of a struggle. Just this brief distortion on the line, like the mic was sucked into static. Officers arrived minutes later. The front door was still locked. No signs of forced entry. The house was empty. No James, no sign of a struggle. His phone was on the bedroom floor, recording. When we listened back, the last thing it picked up was the sound of 2 sets of footsteps walking out of the room together. That and a whisper. "We're one now." We launched a missing persons investigation, canvassed the neighborhood, traced the call, dug into his background. James R. had no history of mental illness, no enemies, no gets, nothing. Just a regular guy with a boring job who lived alone. No one saw him again. A few weeks later, another call came in from a payphone 2 towns over. Same voice, same story. "There's someone at my door. It looks like me." But this time, the call came from someone named Daniel. Different guy, different life, but the fear in his voice, identical. And then it happened again, and again. 5 calls over the span of 2 years. Different towns, same story. Always after 3, a meal number. I don't know what it is. A shapeshifter, a parasite, a version of us from the other side of some cracked mirror. But I can't unhear James's voice. And when I look in the mirror at night, I don't linger. Because I swear, sometimes my reflection smiles just a little too wide. There's a particular kind of silence that fills the room. When you're working the night shift alone, it's not the peaceful kind, not the kind that lets you relax or breathe easy, but more like the silence you get just before a storm hits, where every sound feels amplified, stretched out, and full of tension, like the whole world's holding its breath. And I only mention that because I remember the exact moment that silence was broken. 3:12 a.m., 2 years ago, mid-September, when I answered what I thought would be another welfare check or drunk dial, but instead turned into the single most unsettling call I've ever taken in my 9 years working dispatch. The call came in like any other. Line 1 lit up, no caller ID, just a traceable cell tower on the outskirts of a rural zone south of Mill Creek. I answered with my usual, 911, what's your emergency? There was a long, drawn-out pause, so long I almost repeated myself. But then this quiet, shaky voice came through, male, mid-30s maybe, and he said, "Something's crawling on my ceiling." That sentence hit me weird, not because of what he said exactly, but because of the way he said it, like he'd been sitting there in that room for a long time, staring upward, slowly coming to terms with something he couldn't quite believe. I asked for his name and location. He gave me a first name Kyle and an address I could barely verify on Google Maps. It was way out there, an old farmhouse set back from the road. I asked for clarification. "Do you mean an animal? Like a raccoon or squirrel in the attic?" He didn't answer right away. Then, in this soft, exhausted whisper, he said, "No, it's not an animal. It's crawling on the ceiling, inside my room." I sat up a little straighter, tapped a request for a unit in the area, which would take at least 15 to 20 minutes to arrive, given how remote he was, and asked if he was safe, if he was in danger. He whispered, "I don't know. It's not doing anything, just watching me." From up there? I muted my mic for a second, flagged the call to my supervisor, and unmuted again. "Kyle, can you describe what you're seeing?" There was a creak, maybe from the phone shifting, and then he said, "It's in the corner, up near the ceiling fan. It's long, too long. Its limbs are thin, like like coat hangers. But it's not metal. It's skin, grayish, veiny, and its head is too small. No eyes that I can see, but it knows I'm here." I felt this chill crawl across my back, not because I believed him immediately, but because he didn't sound like he was making it up. He sounded like he was barely holding it together. "Have you taken anything tonight? Medications? Substances?" I asked, and he cut me off gently. "No, I don't even drink. I woke up, and it was there, watching me, like it had always been there." My fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure what to type. "What is it doing now?" I asked, and there was this long, dreadful pause before he whispered, smiling. I blinked, uncertain. Smiling? Does it have a mouth? Not really. Not like ours, but the skin pulls back, like it's trying to mimic it. He was shaking now. I could hear it in his breath. It's like it's pretending to be something human. I told him to stay calm, to stay on the line, that help was on the way. He whispered, it doesn't like that I'm talking to you. It's moving closer. I heard something then, faint, almost imperceptible over the line, but it wasn't static. It was like a soft tapping, like fingers gently drumming on drywall. Kyle, get out of the room, I said, slowly, carefully, but now. I can't, he whispered. If I move, it moves. Every time I twitch, it gets closer. I think it's learning me. Those words hit me like a punch in the chest. What do you mean, learning you? I asked. Like it's trying to figure out how I work, he said. It tilts its head when I breathe hard. When I whisper, it twitches, like it's sensing with me. My supervisor gave me a look like, what the hell is this? And I shook my head because I didn't know either. Can you shine a light on it? Get a photo? Anything? I asked. No, the power's been out, and I don't want to flash it. I think light makes it angry. Then the line glitched, just for a second, but I heard something else, something deep, low, almost like a growl, but layered under the static, like it wasn't coming through the mic so much as leaking into the signal. Kyle, what was that? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then, it's whispering now. I asked, what's it saying? And he said, not English, not words, but I can feel it in my head. Another pause. It knows my name. I felt the hair rise on my arms. Kyle, I want you to get to a door, any exit, and get outside if you can. I'm trying, he whispered, but it's on the ceiling near the door. It knows I want to leave. Then he said something I'll never forget. I think it came through the house, through the walls, like it unfolded itself, like it was always here, just in a different shape. I had no response to that. I just told him to stay as still as possible and wait. Officers were about 6 minutes out. Then something bizarre happened, something I still don't understand. The dispatcher system started echoing, like the line duplicated. I heard myself, delayed by half a second, repeating my own words. Then a second voice joined the line, quiet, dry, and human. It said, "You hear me too?" The voice wasn't Kyle's, wasn't mine. My supervisor heard it as well. She turned white. I tried to speak, but my own voice was now looping, caught in the feedback. "Kyle," I shouted, "can you still hear me?" But he wasn't answering. All I could hear now was breathing. One slow inhale, one shallow exhale, then nothing. The line dropped, dead, no static, just silence. When officers arrived, they found the house unlocked. Power out, Kyle gone. The only thing out of place was the bedroom. Floor scratched, like from claws or nails. Deep grooves in the ceiling above the bed. A fan knocked loose. And written on the wall, in something that looked like ash or soot, "I hear you too." We filed a full report. Never located Kyle. No relatives, no job, no car in the driveway. Just a guy living alone in a farmhouse who saw something no one should ever see. What makes it worse is that 6 months later, we got another call, different county, different voice, different man. But the same words, "Something is crawling on my ceiling." And when we tried to trace it, the call was already gone. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, one of those rare shifts where nothing major had happened yet. No highway accidents, no domestic disturbances, not even the usual weekend drunks causing a scene. And I remember thinking, almost foolishly, that it was shaping up to be a slow day, The kind of shift where I might even have time to finish my sandwich and organize the incident report backlog I'd been ignoring all week. But that was before line 3 lit up around 2:24 p.m., and I picked it up expecting a noise complaint, or maybe a lost hiker, because it was autumn, and the trails up by Devil's Hollow had been packed lately. Lots of people trying to soak in the last of the color before the cold really set in. And I swear to you, I still remember every word of that call, like it just happened yesterday. The man on the line sounded shaken, but trying to hold it together. And that's always the first red flag I notice, when someone's trying to sound calm, but their voice is just a little too tight, a little too rehearsed, like they're not sure if what they're saying is even real. He said his name was David, mid-40s, former military, from the way he spoke. Precise, clipped, efficient, but you could hear the fear behind it. "I think I found a little girl," he said. "She's alone, in the woods, crying." I immediately sat up, heart rate shifting gears. I asked where he was, and he gave me a GPS pin from his phone. About 4 miles into the back end of Hollow Trail, way off the beaten path, not where any kid should have been, especially not alone. "How old does she look?" I asked. He said maybe 8, maybe 10, long brown hair, wearing a white dress, barefoot, crying quietly, wouldn't speak. Said he'd been hiking solo and spotted her near an old fire pit deep in the trees, just sitting on a fallen log like she'd been waiting for someone. "Have you asked her name?" I asked, and that's when something shifted in his voice. "She won't answer, just keeps looking past me. Not at me, through me." Now, I've heard all kinds of odd things on the job, people hallucinating, people panicking, but there was something about the way he said it that made my skin crawl. I told him to stay with her, stay calm, and that I was dispatching rangers and deputies to his location immediately. He thanked me and said he'd try to comfort her, and for a moment, I heard him talking to her, soft, patient, gentle, but she still didn't respond, just sniffled. Then, about a minute later, I heard him again, but his voice had changed. It was quieter now and tinged with confusion. "She wants me to follow her," he said. She pointed deeper into the woods. I told him to wait. I told him help was coming, that following her was dangerous, but he hesitated, and then he said something I still can't explain. She pointed at a path that wasn't there before. I asked what he meant, and he said, "I've hiked this area a dozen times. There's no trail where she's pointing. But now there is. It's narrow, like animal-made, but clear." My supervisor overheard me and immediately flagged it. I told David again to stay put, not to move. But then he said, "I can't let her go alone. She's scared." And then he started walking. I heard the crunch of leaves, the snap of twigs, his breath getting more labored as he followed her. "She's fast," he said. I didn't think a kid could move this fast barefoot. I reminded him to keep talking to me, to describe everything. He said the trees were changing, getting thicker, older. Said it was colder now too, and darker, even though the sun hadn't set. "Something's wrong with this forest," he whispered. "It doesn't feel right, like I'm not supposed to be here." I told him to turn back, that help was closing in, but he just said, "She keeps looking back, like she wants to make sure I'm still coming." Then there was silence, just for a moment, and then, "There's another one." I froze. "Another what?" I asked. "Another girl," he said, breath quickening. "Same dress, same hair, but older. She's behind a tree, watching us, smiling." His voice cracked then, just a little. "She doesn't blink." I could hear him turning, trying to decide which way to go. I begged him to stop walking, to go back the way he came. He said, "I don't know which way that is anymore. The trail. It's gone." Static began creeping into the line. I asked if he could still see the original girl. He said yes, but she'd stopped walking. She was standing in front of a large, moss-covered stone with carvings on it, old and worn and unreadable. "She's looking at it like it's a doorway," he whispered. "She wants me to go through." I said, "David, do not move. I'm serious. Stay put. Help is close." But his voice changed again, softer, almost entranced. "I think I've seen this place before," he said. "I dreamed about it once when I was a kid." Then, in a barely audible breath, "I think she remembers me." And then everything went wrong. The call fractured, snapping and crackling like the line had been stretched too thin. And I heard this high, sharp tone in my headset, almost like a scream, but mechanical, distant, not human. I yelled for him, called his name over and over, but the only thing I heard was him whisper, "There's a third one now." And then, click, dead line. I sat there frozen, pulse pounding, fingers still gripping the mic. When the Rangers finally arrived at his GPS location, they found nothing. No girl, no man, no sign of anyone having been there recently. No footprints, no fire pit, just undisturbed forest. But here's the part that still chills me. When they searched the area later that week, using dogs and drones, they found an old, forgotten stone buried under leaves and moss, just like he'd described. No path nearby, no trail. And when they cleaned it off, there were carvings, worn and ancient looking. And etched faintly into one corner were the words Lila 1982. A girl by that name had gone missing in those woods 40 years ago. Same age, same dress, never found. I don't know what David saw, or where he went, or what those girls were. But I've taken a lot of strange calls in my life, and that one felt like I was listening to someone being drawn into something older than any of us. Something that knows our names, our faces, and waits patiently in the trees for us to remember it. It was a rainy Wednesday night, just past midnight, when the call came in, line 2, unlisted number, standard incoming tone, and I remember it clearly not just because of what happened, but because of how quiet the center had been that night. Just the low buzz of fluorescent lights, the occasional cough from the overnight tech across the room, and my coffee going cold beside a stack of barely started reports, and then that soft ping of the phone line lighting up, almost like a whisper asking to be heard. So I answered the way I always do. 911, what's your emergency? And at first, there was silence. Not the kind that makes you think the caller hung up, but the kind that makes you feel like someone's on the other end, deciding whether or not they're ready to speak, like a breath being held. And when he finally spoke, his voice was calm, eerily calm, too steady, like he'd rehearsed this conversation 100 times already, and all that was left now was to let the words out. "I'd like to report a murder," he said. "My name is Thomas. The body's in the basement." I straightened in my chair, pen in hand, asked for clarification. "You found a body, sir?" Another pause. "No, I didn't find it," he said. "I put it there." I blinked, confused. "Can you repeat that?" And in the same emotionless, even tone, he said, "I killed someone. It happened earlier tonight. I've cleaned up most of it, but the body's still here." I thought I should call. I flagged my supervisor immediately, already pulling up GPS trace protocols. "Are you in danger now?" I asked, playing it by the book. "No," he said. "Not unless you count regret." Something in his voice made my stomach turn. Not a trace of panic, not a hint of mania, just this dead, heavy emptiness, like he'd already stepped out of his own conscience and was watching things happen from a distance. "Tell me your address," I said, and he gave it calmly. An old residential neighborhood near the edge of town, house built in the 1960s, nothing suspicious on file. "Who did you kill, Thomas?" I asked. Another beat. Then he said, "A man I've never met. Or maybe I have. It's hard to explain." That's when I knew something wasn't adding up. I asked if he was experiencing a mental health crisis, if he was confused or in need of immediate medical care, but he said no. I'm not crazy, he told me. I planned this. I just didn't expect it to feel this empty. I asked how the murder happened. Hammer, he said. One to the back of the head. He didn't see it coming. He made this noise. I think about that noise now. I didn't think I would, but it stuck. I felt my throat go dry. I've handled violent calls before. People mid-breakdown, mid-crime. But this wasn't that. This was something colder, more methodical. Why are you calling now? I asked, and he said, because he's still smiling. I paused. The body? Yes, he whispered. Even now, mouth open, eyes wide. It's like he knew, like he was waiting for it. Officers were already en route. I kept him talking. I asked who the man was. He said he didn't know. He met him online, supposedly a drifter, came over for a drink, and things escalated. I thought I'd feel something, he said. Anger, triumph, anything. But it's just quiet now. I asked if he'd ever killed before. He hesitated. Not like this. I started to think this guy was confessing to something else entirely. Not just murder, but some kind of deeper, older obsession. Did you know this man before tonight? I asked. Only in pieces, he said. His stories. His voice. The way he laughed at things that weren't funny. I felt something cold tighten in my chest. You're saying you knew him online? Not quite, he replied. I heard about him through someone else. A thread. A post. An urban legend, maybe. But the thing is, he trailed off. It's hard to know who's real anymore. The trace pinged the address. Officers were about 2 minutes out. I told him that help was coming, and he laughed, soft, breathy. Help? No, I'm not asking for help. I'm asking for clarity. I've been seeing things. I paused. What kind of things? He said, reflections that move on their own. Voices through the static. Shadows that watch but never blink. And the man I killed? He knew about them too. That's why I did it. Now the hairs on my arms were standing up. You think he brought something with him? I asked. Not brought, he corrected. Revealed. Like cutting away the skin of reality and showing me what's underneath. The line popped with faint static. I could hear footsteps in the background. They're coming up from the basement, he said. They're not supposed to move. But now they are. My supervisor looked at me like, what the hell is he talking about? I didn't know how to respond. Thomas, I said carefully, you need to stay where you are. Officers are almost there. Do not go back down. Too late, he said. I think there's more than one now. The static grew louder. They look like him, he whispered. But they don't breathe. They just smile. Then silence. When officers arrived, they found the house unlocked. Inside, they found the body. Male, mid-30s, head trauma consistent with a blunt object. Just like he said, but no sign of Thomas. No fingerprints, no phone. Nothing to tie the call to the scene except the open line and a faint recording of the last 5 minutes stored on our system. Forensics said the victim had been dead for over 6 hours before the call even came in, which means whoever I was talking to couldn't have been there, couldn't have done it. And yet, he described everything, every detail. And here's the part I haven't told anyone, not officially. On the recording, buried under the final burst of static, if you listen closely, you can hear a second voice,